Consultancy Growth Network. As you'll know, I'm a big believer in learning from people who've achieved the things that you want to. It's why I run this podcast, to share the stories of consulting leaders and how they've got to where they are today. So when I started talking to Mark Jansen and the team at Consultancy Growth Network, it was clear there was an obvious fit between Climate Consulting and their mission and what they are building with their network. But you're probably asking, what is the Consultancy Growth Network? The Consultancy Growth Network is the leading community of boutique consulting leaders. It brings together seasoned consulting growth experts who successfully scaled their own boutiques, with rapidly growing consulting founders looking to emulate their success. Now, you might be thinking, who are these growth experts? What do they actually know about consulting? And this is one of the most exciting things that personally I find about the network. The team at the Consultancy Growth Network have searched far and wide for some of the best boutique consulting leaders to help their members on their journeys, some of which I have previously interviewed for this podcast, such as Don Morehouse and Augusto Negrillo. But it's not just the insights from these people that you will benefit from. By joining, you get access to their jam-packed calendar of regular in-person and online events, their comprehensive growth hub of resources, and their active Slack community. Through all of these channels, you can learn, solve challenges, and achieve the goals you want for your firm. And now, if that wasn't enough reason to sign up, the Consultancy Growth Network is giving all listeners to this podcast a special sign-up offer. If you join for 12 months, you join for that next year, you will get your 13th month for free, giving you that extra month to continue to build on everything you're learning and continue to benefit from the network. To sign up, just visit consultancygrowthnetwork.com or contact their partnerships director, Luke at consultancygrowthnetwork.com. And when you're talking about joining, mention Create Engage or Climate Consulting, and you will get that special sign-up offer. Hi, and welcome back to Climate Consulting. In this episode, I am joined by Richard Longstreet, founder of Tarka Talent, one of the go-to names when it comes to recruitment in the consulting world. Richard has helped countless boutique consultancies hire at every level, and in this conversation, we zero in on many of the challenges that they face, particularly when it comes to senior hires, to partner-level hires. We talk about what works, what doesn't, and why so many partner-level hires fail to deliver, and also why that isn't always their fault. We also talk about everything that you would want to know around salary trends for your consultancy, whether you are a consultant looking at the job market or you are running a boutique and you want to make sure that you are offering the best employee experience for your team. We talk about salaries, we talk about promotions, and we talk about the shift in what consultants are looking for when it comes to their next role and the culture of the firm that they want to join. Whether you are looking to scale your team and want to be front of the pack when it comes to attracting new consultants, or maybe you are listening to this with one eye on a move as we come out of summer. Either way, you are going to love this conversation. So, with the intro done, please enjoy today's conversation with Richard Longstreet. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm very excited to talk today because we are going to cover a lot of things that I know many consultancies struggle with all around hiring. Obviously, you've hired tons of consultants from analyst to partner level, and so we'll have some great insights. But for those who maybe don't know you, could you just give a short intro on who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm Richard Longstreet. I'm the founder of Tarka Talent. We are a management consulting recruitment firm. My background's a bit circular. So I started in recruitment straight out of uni. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Some family friends worked for a recruitment firm, and I was desperate to move to London, escape Devon. And I said to them, "Look, would your business look at a graduate who doesn't know what he wants to do?" And they said, "Absolutely, yes." So I worked for a year in recruitment first up, and then I decided it wasn't for me. And I left to join Capgemini Consulting on the graduate program there. I had a few friends at Capgemini from uni, and they said, "Look, culturally, this is the type of place you'd really thrive." So I applied, went through the assessment center and that type of thing, and got a role there on their graduate scheme. Got promoted early off that, and did another year and a bit at Capgemini, and then I realized that my my internal work was actually what was exciting me more than my client delivery. And all of my internal work revolved around recruitment because I'd worked in recruitment before. So I was responsible for, I was looking after graduate attraction. So I was looking at which universities we were going to, which societies we were sponsoring, what events we were running at different places. And I got involved with graduate assessment as well. So I was using psychometrics. We were looking at things like video interviews at the time and that side of it. And I found that excited me a lot more than the client delivery I was doing. And it reached the point where actually I kind of just decided, look, there must be an opportunity for me to go out and recruit back into consultancies because I had previously recruited marketers. And I approached a few of the guys that I had used to work with who had since left their old business and they'd set up their own thing as a marketing and digital recruiter. And having come from Capgemini, we talked a lot about digital transformation. It was the buzzword at the time. So I said, look, can I set up a digital transformation practice for your marketing and digital recruitment firm? They backed me to do it. So I set that up for them and ran that for 5 years, which was almost all recruiting into management consulting firms because that was obviously what I knew. And then 4.5 years ago, I split my team away from there to set up Tarka Talent. And we've grown over the last 4.5 years to a team of 10. Still focused predominantly on management consulting recruitment. We do a little bit of work direct to industry as well, but it's mostly consulting or the consulting skill set. We're UK based. We recruit in the UK, the US. We've done some work in the Middle East and across Europe as well. We're looking at whether to set up a footprint internationally. The US is probably next on the cards or first on the cards. But at the moment, everyone's based here. And yeah, it's been an awesome journey setting that up. And our sweet spot, if you like, is the smaller and mid-sized consulting firm, often taking people out of the likes of the Big Four or Accenture or one of those businesses to join the smaller firms.
Fantastic. Well, and I think a really nice lead into today, Richard, because a lot of listeners to this show are those small, those medium-sized, boutique, whatever word you want to use for it. And so much of what you do and so much of that hiring process can often seem like a bit of a mystery, a bit of a dark art. And given how many firms you've hired for, given how many candidates you've spoken to, I know you're going to be able to help them. And obviously, as you know, as many of my listeners know, I like to have guests who have built consultancies for people to learn from. I also like to have people like yourself who are, as we are at Create Engage, partners to the industry, because you see so much in that specific area that you can help people with. And so for today, we'll dive into those. And I think the first place that I'd love to start is senior hiring. And you can tell me what you would class that as. But I speak to so many consultancies and I hear so many where they've just, the number of times they've tried to hire a partner and failed, or tried to hire a senior person. And I'd love to know what you see as those key challenges. Why is it people get it wrong? And what is it that almost sets the ones that do succeed, apart from the ones that it lasts for 3, 6, 12 months, and then it's back again to recruit and back onto back on the trail?
So senior hiring, I think, is one of the most difficult things for consultancies to get right. If you think of how a lot of consultancies start and launch, it is often 1 or 2 senior founders, and then they will build a team beneath them. But when it comes to adding to that leadership team, they don't really know what they're going after. It's almost like they're going after a replica of themselves, but that likely wouldn't work as a hire, and also it's quite difficult to find. So it's quite a difficult thing to articulate what you want early doors, particularly in the very, very small firms who are making maybe their first or second senior hire. It's worth saying that I think over the last 4 or 5 years, so probably since I launched Tarka, there has been more and more and more demand for senior hires into boutique consultancies. There was an absolute boom in the market in 2021 and 2022, where almost every consultancy was recruiting. Every consulting client was desperate for consulting support off the back of COVID. So there was this wonder period. But then end of 2022 into 2023 and then through 2024, the consulting market has been much harder. Like it's been a much more difficult operating market. So a lot of consultancies have come to the conclusion that a senior hire is the way to get themselves out of this issue. If you can bring someone in, good senior hire who can sell work, who has got relationships and can bring those relationships across, that is the way that you're going to grow in a difficult market. I don't necessarily disagree with that as a theory. I think you need to temper expectations with that as a concept, though. I saw a stat online the other day, and I don't know quite how true this is, but the stat was something in the region of 40% of partner hires work out. So you're almost thinking every other hire that we make at senior leadership level, we have to be prepared for that one to not work out. That's not my stat. It's something that another consultant recruiter put online, but I can really see the validity of it, particularly in smaller and mid-sized firms rather than the larger firms, where there's obviously a slightly better support network around senior hires. Why do I think that is that a number of senior hires don't work out? The classic consulting answer is it depends, and I think there are a lot of kind of different answers to this question. One of the first reasons why it doesn't work out is it's really difficult to know how solid that person's relationships are with their client base. How much is the relationship with them as an individual versus the consultancy that they're coming from? We hosted a roundtable breakfast here a month ago for founders and leaders of financial services consultancies. And one of the executive directors from one of the firms, he said, he's ex-Big Four. He said, look, I had 7 fantastic relationships when I was in the Big Four, who I was so confident were going to come across with me. 2 of them came across with him when he moved to this very, very small boutique that's now scaling. And he had been adamant that all 7 probably would have come with him. If he was kind of tempering his expectations, he might have thought 4 or 5, but only a couple came. So that makes it really, really difficult for a potential employer of someone like that to say, well, actually, what's a return going to look like for us on this person? Are we banking on them bringing all 7? Are we banking on them bringing 4 or 5 relationships? Or is 1 or 2 good enough in this instance with the work that will come from that? There is the support network that a smaller and boutique can offer compared to the larger firms. Someone selling in the likes of the Big Four as opposed to a boutique, it's a very, very different way of selling. You get a lot more inbound leads in the larger firms. You have a much stronger marketing, BD team around you who maybe has all of the right content and materials, and it's much more a responsive sales process than it is a proactive one. And I had a chat with a couple of consulting founders about this recently. There is a view that a lot of the people who have stepped up into senior manager, director, possibly even partner since 2020, 2021, where there was that boom market, a lot of the senior leadership haven't necessarily had to go out and hunt in the way that maybe they used to have to pre-COVID. So the viewpoint is that maybe these people aren't necessarily equipped in the same way to go out and win a lot of cold work and go out and network their way within a business or whatever else it might be. So there's accumulation of factors as to why a number of senior hires wouldn't work out. One of the interesting elements, I think, if you are assessing senior talent is how much are you basing it on what someone's done previously and how much are you basing it on the attributes that someone has and what they might be able to do. On my podcast recently, we had someone talk about some of the most successful senior hires that he had made, and he was talking about hiring almost solely on attributes. And there was someone he had brought into his previous business at partner level who had been a senior manager in their previous business, effectively skipping director. And he just said, I'm taking a punt on this bloke, but I can really see what's going to work out.
And what were, for that person or for the clients you work with, what are those attributes that our listeners should look for? And almost how do you discern true attribute versus someone who is just very good at presenting? Because consultants are all very good at presenting.
It is really difficult. I think you almost have to combine what someone is saying with how they're saying it and how much you can probe it. I think it is expected now that someone's first answer to a question in an interview should be quite polished and should be well presented, and you almost need to peel away. So what type of attributes would I be looking for someone? There has to be a dynamism, a drive, a hunger. I would probably be looking at almost how someone feels, what motivates someone, and how do they feel rewarded from what or for what they are doing. Like, what does success look like to or for them? Not monetarily or anything like that, but like what gives them a feeling of success. Like, there are some people who are more natural salespeople because the idea of going out and winning a relationship, the idea of going out and networking their way around a client business, that's going to really incentivize and motivate someone and give them energy. Whereas a lot of other people, they know it's a necessary part of the job, but actually what they really want to focus on is delivery, or they want to focus on something else. So the dynamism, the drive and the motivation, I think is one of the key elements there. One of the other attributes I think is really important is the concept of ownership, and someone who feels like they can and want to own something. Particularly if they're going into a boutique, they want to have agency, they want to have that ownership over what they are doing, over their own outcomes, over their own kind of portfolio of business there. if you can provide someone with that, and if that's what they're asking for, then I think you're possibly onto a bit of a winner with that, because there's someone who is going to take pride in their own delivering their own outcomes, rather than exclusively someone who's going to buy into a team outcome. And obviously you need to have someone who's a team player, but you want someone who also wants to have that ownership of their own outcomes.
There's a couple of things we've touched on here, and I'll probably ask them in order so I don't muddy them. One is we've talked a little bit, almost in an assumptive way, that those people are moving from Big Four to boutique. And again, from where you've seen those kind of success stories, is there a correlation? Is it, obviously the Big Four have a lot more partners than many boutiques, so that move is a well-trodden path. But do you see a correlation? Is it, for instance, you're better off hiring a partner who's been in a small firm because they've lived that life? Or is it actually you are better hiring the Big Four person? Again, the answer is it depends, I'm sure. But are there certain truisms or things that our listeners, if they're looking at two candidates, boutique partner will be better at this versus Big Four partner?
It's so much more down to the individual. Like it depends answer. Like it is so much focus on the individual there. It's quite important to remember that we're in an environment at the moment where there are a lot of Big Four partners looking to leave the Big Four because they don't feel like they're necessarily getting fairly rewarded for the work that they're putting in. They want to have more ownership over their own proposition, whatever it is that they're taking to market. They might feel that if they go to a smaller firm, they can do that. They can be part of a growth journey. We are in a market environment where private equity is starting to take more of an interest in professional services. So there are a lot of success stories of consultancies who have grown and sold, and that's quite an attractive proposition again to a lot of these Big Four partners. So there are a lot of leadership from the Big Four considering a move. I've spoken to some boutique founders and CEOs who would say, I don't want to hire a partner from the Big Four because they're so used to having this big sales engine around them. It's not them. It's not their individual relationships. It's just with the business. They don't really know how to sell in a small firm. I don't think that's always true. It is so much more down to the individuals. Equally, I've spoken to people in smaller firms who maybe had one really good relationship and they've managed to farm that relationship fantastically for 4 or 5 years and generated some decent revenue from that. But you put them in a new business where that relationship's not there, and for 18 months they might not sell anything. And for a lot of founders, 18 months is a little bit too much runway for a very expensive hire. So there is no one-size-fits-all type of answer.
Just a quick ask, if you are enjoying today's episode, if you have got anything so far from my guest today or any of my guests that you have listened to on the show, it would mean so much to me if you could take a second right now, open up your phone and leave a review on the platform that you are listening to this show on right now. Your review, your recommendation, and your feedback on what we can do better in those reviews means the world to me and helps us deliver a better show for you and for all of the listeners who come after you. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. I want to jump on, you mentioned that 18-month point, and this as well might be helpful where we're speaking, where our listeners are running those boutiques, is almost let's start with those expectations. The other side would be what should they be saying to a candidate? Because to take your example, that person who came over from a Big Four, I'd love to know and not specifically the firm who hired them, but generalize that, what that firm hiring says to them. Because again, if you're trying to attract someone, you can overplay the positives, downplay the negatives. And I guess for our kind of listeners who are running those boutiques, maybe we start what should they be expecting? You mentioned 18 months is a lot of runway. Should they be expecting a millions pipeline in a year, 3 million, 5 million? Should it be 5 years? Actually, what is a reasonable expectation to judge success by?
It's a difficult answer to give a really concrete, or difficult question to give a really concrete answer to, primarily because my expectations of every senior director partner going through an interview process for most of these boutiques is, what is the business case that I'm presenting to you? If I'm saying to you, I can generate £2.5 million worth of revenue in year one, and that'll grow to 3.5 in year two, and then 5 in year three. If that's what I'm committing to, which is why you're paying me 350 grand and you're giving me equity and whatever else, my next on the line to deliver that. If I'm being slightly more circumspect about it and thinking, okay, I might do 1.25 in year one, then I'll do 2.5 in year two, 3.5 in year three, and actually there's going to be a ramp up where I'm going to earn my equity after 2 years for hitting these targets, then yeah, I've probably got a little bit more runway for before that starts to become an issue if I don't necessarily generate or hit that target in year one. There's a lot of consultancies who don't necessarily, or who don't do that ramp up, and they just expect someone to be able to do 2.5 million in year one. For me, that's not really realistic. I'm sure it does happen. I'm sure there are people who can, will deliver that in year one. I wouldn't say it's a fair expectation of someone necessarily if they're coming, particularly if they've got non-competes and they've got restrictions on who they can go after for a period of time. You probably need to be looking at an 18-month runway, but you need to have a realistic expectation on year one before you start to think about what year two, when they're out of their restrictions, and maybe who they can go after at that point.
No, I think I really like that point, and both sides, the candidate being realistic and also the hiring firm. To touch on and continue on that hiring firm theme, what are the things that those hiring senior leaders almost should be making blindingly clear? To your point, big firms have all of these other teams, BD, marketing, etc. And I know it sounds obvious, maybe they should tell the candidate they don't, but how do you guide your clients in terms of, I guess, that setting expectations for those hires? Because it's not always the hire's fault. If they've been sold the dream, and to your point, it's complete greenfield, that's very different from we have 10 clients that you just need to make friends with, nurture, etc.
This is a really good example of this quite recently. A client that I know we both work with, who were looking for this senior type hire. It was direct grade for them. But as part of our briefing, I was asking them, what is the machine that you've got behind this person? Like who or what is going to support this person from a marketing and lead generation standpoint? Who's going to be creating content? Are there pre-existing relationships that they would be looking to take up? Or are you looking for someone to come in and generate everything from scratch? It's super important to have all of that out in the open quite early. So I was saying to them, when it comes to that first interview, make a clear expectation of, I'm carving out 20 minutes to talk to you about how things are operating here at the moment. So that you can then, if we both want to take this conversation forward, what your business case is going to be based on in terms of what I can provide you as an organization. Similarly, I know another business who first interview is a one-on-one with one of the founders, and this is an 80, 90 person business, one-on-one with one of the founders. And then it goes straight to, let's start building a business case. Here's our rate card. Here's how we operate. Where do you think you can go out and generate relationships? Which relationships are you going to try and bring with us, or bring with you, sorry. What does year one look like? What does year two look like? How much do you want me to pay you for that? Does that stack up in terms of what we need from a profit margin standpoint on you? And it's just super transparent from really day one. And for me, that's quite an interesting way of doing it. Not everyone loves it.
I was going to say, how does that? Because I love the openness, transparency, and to your point that it gives the clear expectations. How does that work for said firm?
I'm going to say they've had mixed results with it. It's definitely put some people off, but at the same time, they've had some people who say, yeah, cool. This way of working where it is open, it's transparent. I know that we are all on the same page. And if it comes down to some sort of negotiation towards the end around, well, if I generated 2.2, this is what I'll earn from a bonus standpoint. If it's 2.5, then this. Everyone's on the same page then, and everyone knows what they're talking about in a very clear way. And I think that's quite a nice way of doing it. But we have had a fair few people say, this feels really impersonal. Like they're not looking at me, they are just looking at me as a number. It's almost Dragon's Den-y. So yeah, it puts some people off, but some people really like it.
Well, and I guess it's a great example because it shows a culture, and you choose if you want to be part of that culture. That is hiring. And there's something interesting in I guess the reason for this. And again, you will speak to people all the time about this. So almost, given the market right now, it's tough with hiring to sell. Is there also within this, for anyone listening, almost a point at which you should be bringing senior hires, and we'll come back to the kind of, we here have talked about senior selling partners, but is there something around the when, and almost are you bringing them in to try and solve the fact you aren't selling versus growing the business that's already succeeding?
It's a difficult balance to strike, because you wait too long and you've probably stagnated, and then it does feel like we're hiring to try and rescue the business, and that puts a lot of pressure on someone who might be coming in to come in and generate new work wherever it might be. But obviously, if you bring someone in too early and they need a 12, 18-month runway before they start generating significant revenue, you might not be in a position where you can afford that. Is there a right time to do it? I think most consulting founders will probably say if they've got a solid enough view on the future 3-6 months worth of work, they're confident that they're utilized and they can afford to have someone putting in the groundwork in that time, then it's probably okay. But if you're looking at the next 3 months and thinking, we're going to have a pretty significant bench soon, we need to find someone who can sell some work to try and save us from that, you're probably not looking at it in the right way.
And again, this might be a conversation you have, and I'd just be fascinated from what you are seeing. Is we're talking here, we have, and because our industry does, like, senior hire equals a partner who can sell. And in the consulting archetype, that is a doer seller. We've all seen the graphs that the McKinsey grad jobs had many moons ago, kind of as you climb more senior, you do more of the selling, but you still do a bit of both. Do you ever speak to or advise people or find consultancies looking more at pure play salespeople? And it's a big question, but do you have a perspective or review on it? Because it's not that common in consulting, but it's the thing everyone wants.
I probably have my own view on this, and I have the view that I would say a lot of consulting founders have told me when they talk to me about making a consultant director or a partner hire to be a salesperson. And I say, are we looking for an experienced consultant who can sell? Are we looking for a partner in another business? Am I looking for a salesperson? Almost all of them would say they need to be a consultant who can sell. They need to have the subject matter knowledge. They need to have delivered. They need to have been in that situation to understand all of the scenarios for them to sell this work properly. I can think of a couple of consultancies who have hired out-and-out salespeople, not necessarily from a consulting or professional services background. I think one of those would say that they'd been really successful with that hire. The other would probably say no.
What's your view? You said there's the view of the consulting. What would your view be, Richard?
I think you need to have consulting knowledge to be able to sell consulting work properly. And I think you probably need to have operated at a level of seniority to be able to sell the scale of work that most consultancies are going to look for someone to sell if they bring them in. This is part of the difficulty that we find with senior interim consultants. So maybe people who have worked their way up and gone interim, gone freelance, and have been a freelance consultant for 5-10 years. They're very, very adept at selling themselves and managing a network of relationships that they have. But selling £1 million worth of work off the back of that, or 2.5, and kind of these big programs, they're probably not set up for that. But they would all say, I've been selling myself. I've got this network of relationships. I can bring that with me. Most consultancies would probably look at them and say, this doesn't feel right. It's not going to work. And that's the feedback that we've had repeatedly over the last few years with that type of profile. So I think you do have to have been in a position where you are starting to sell genuine consulting projects to land successfully in a boutique where you're then going to have to sell.
Fascinating.
I should say, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be at director or partner level. A lot of consultancies, maybe at senior manager level, you start doing some real sales. And that real sales could be farming an account. It could be generating sell-on work. But in that scenario, you are likely to be networking internally with a client, trying to understand client issues, trying to understand the problems they're facing, helping create and shape solutions to that. Like, you're getting all the foundations of selling from that. And maybe if you go into a different environment where that is more of a focus of your role, you could be super successful. You don't necessarily need to have been a director or a partner selling multi-million-pound projects before.
And there's another angle to this, and again, just in case this helps other people, because we've gone to senior hires is a partner who sells. And if I'm listening to this, almost regardless of the size of my firm, could be 10, 100, however many, is if someone is struggling with capacity, which is usually what a sale, what that hire is to do, are there any alternatives that you find yourself recommending, or from a talent perspective, we'll get people to think about, my mind jumps to, could they hire a senior person to do ops, or could they promote from within? Almost, are there times where you would say those are better solutions, and are there other solutions that I haven't mentioned, you're like, this can work for you if you're listening to this as well?
I can definitely think of examples where it would have been beneficial for a business to have focused on an ops director to free up more of the founder's time so that the founders could go out and sell more before they then went to make a sales hire. Yeah, there are definitely examples of that. It's not dissimilar to a conversation we were having over lunch earlier. The difficulty for a lot of smaller firms is how you move it away from being so solely founder-led and founder almost cultish. It all revolves around one person. You probably reach a limit where that stops working. You've exhausted all of your individual relationships. Most people would probably say they could do more work with their existing clients rather than having to go out and generate new clients and new logos. So actually, if you could free up more of your time as a founder to go out and exhaust the relationships that you've got, and maybe with existing clients, who else within those businesses, how can you network internally, those type of things. That's probably not a bad way of going about it before you commit to a super expensive external hire. But that said, if you are looking at trying to really increase your brand presence in a certain sector and there's someone who is available who is a leading authority in X or Y space, why would you not jump at that as well?
I think a great point. I want to turn us, Richard, to an area that I know you have tons of data on, and it links a bit, but it's more across the spectrum. Is you and your team have what I think is the most comprehensive salary survey, consulting, job movers survey in the industry. And I'd love us to spend some time on that, because to what we've just talked about, and as you know, consultants are very analytical people. They love data, and you now have all of the data on the industry. But for those who may not have downloaded the survey, and I know many have, could you just paint a bit of the picture, what it covers, how many people fed in? Because I think it's amazing the scale of what you've actually created there.
Every year since I launched Tarka, we have created an annual salary report, and it's taken different forms over the last 4 or 5 years. Part of the reason why we set it up is, obviously it is almost the number one question that we get asked by clients is, what should we be paying our staff? Almost every candidate that we speak to is asking, am I being paid fairly? So actually having that data to back all of that up is why we started putting it together. One of the years that we did it, we structured it slightly differently. We put a little bit more business by business, and we linked it to title structures in different firms. And is a manager at PwC paid the same as a manager at Baringa, for example? And we really broke it down granularly.
Was that I remember when that was the grade mapping.
Yeah, and that's still available on our website. We are looking at turning it into more of an interactive tool. There's a fair bit of cost associated to try and build it out properly. So we're in that process of trying to build it. But that year, yeah, we linked salaries to it. What we did this year, which we will carry on doing because it's landed really, really well. We ran a survey from probably September through December last year on how people were feeling about the market, if they were looking to move, why they were looking to move, what their key motivators were. We asked around what benefits they received in their existing businesses. We asked around what bonuses they'd received in 2024. We asked about people getting promoted or not getting promoted. And it gave us tons of insight on sentiment, I guess, within the market. And then we could break that down by whether people were in the big four or not, if they were happy to divulge that. And that was based off a survey of, I think we were in the 300-400 consultants completed that, which was decent. And then the salary information on there, that's taken from everyone who we spoke to last year in the UK market, which is something in the region of 3,000, 4,000 data points.
Wow. And that's real salary data, because you are, we assume they tell the truth, but you are literally helping them move jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So a standard part of our screening interview, if you like, or the initial conversations with people are, what are you earning at the moment? What does the package look like? What are you looking for from a salary standpoint in a new role? So yeah, it's taken from that data point there. And we've broken that down by whether someone's in Accenture or the Big Four, whether they're in a boutique or whether they're in a strategy firm, because the strategy consulting salaries are generally quite different. And yeah, it's one of these pieces of content that we've created that just lands really, really well with everyone, both candidates and clients alike. And yeah, there's some really good data points and insights on there as well, I think.
Well, and it'd be great to pull some of those out for our listeners. And I mean, you gave a host of different areas that we can use as jumping off points, but maybe you mentioned you've been doing this for the whole time Tarka has been going, and this survey was slightly different. What were those standout points for you? What was the thing or things you were like, I wasn't expecting that, or wow, it's amazing how that's changed over that time?
So there were, I guess, as a commentary on the market from last year, salaries didn't really increase in terms of core salary brackets within consultancies didn't shift. People did get pay rises. I think the way that we broke it down, we asked the average pay rise, I think last year was something in the region of 8.6%, but that included people who had been promoted, and we hadn't broken it down enough. So next year we are going to break that down further. But there was also something in the region, I think it was 45% of people said that they hadn't got an inflationary pay increase. So it did paint a picture, I guess, of the market last year where it was a subdued market. Business consultancies didn't have money to throw around on pay rises. A lot of promotions were withheld last year. A fair few businesses made redundancies. So it painted a picture of the market not being great last year. And that was kind of true in 2023 as well. The core salary brackets shifted a lot in 21 and 22, but then haven't really moved since then. But they also hadn't really moved for about 5 years before that either. A manager at PwC, or the manager salary bracket at PwC pre-COVID hadn't really moved in 4 years. And then during COVID, it shifted twice. Same at Accenture, same at a lot of other consultancies. And it just took one or two of the bigger firms to move, and then all of the boutiques felt like they had to catch up to compete for talent, and everyone was recruiting at the time, so they were really competing for talent. And we had examples of people getting 30, 35% pay rises in those couple of years, whereas the average pay rise last year, I think, was something in the region of 11 or 12%, and that's much more what we expected. One of the stats that was quite interesting last year was the number of people who got paid a bonus. That was higher than what we had anticipated, particularly in what hadn't been a great year. But we do think there was an element there where it was possibly not pacifying, but trying to keep happy a number of those people who maybe had been withheld their promotion. So they weren't going to get the pay rise, and title uplift and everything else that obviously comes with the promotion, but they did get a bonus to sweeten it slightly.
And you mentioned around the why people move, and I guess that would be fascinating as well, because to your point, it has been a tougher market, and clearly, as your data shows, back in that kind of 21, that 22, that COVID time, cash was king, and who can think ill of someone who's going to move? Thinking 35% pay rise is huge. In today's world, those pay rises, from what you're saying, aren't as forthcoming. People are being a bit sort of stricter on that. What is it that's prompting people to move? And I'm thinking, particularly for those listening who are running for it, what is it that they could do to agitate those reasons, if you like?
There were three key motivators that we had come back from the survey. Money was one. So people are still looking for some form of a salary uplift. Career progression was two, career development. So again, in an environment where people getting withheld or promotions were withheld, people were looking to progress their career. And then a better or positive working culture was the third. Interesting, when we split it, the survey results by gender, for our female consultants, the working culture was more important than career development. Not by a lot, but that was the one difference that we saw. But salary and money was number one factor there. But I do think people's expectations are tempered from that 25, 30, 35% pay rises. Most of the candidates we speak to now are somewhere between 10 and 15% uplift they are looking for. And they are, if you can combine that with a promotion, a title uplift, that would be amazing for a lot of candidates now. And historically, that's been something that consultancy won't do. Don't promote in a move. If you're good enough to get promoted, you get promoted in your existing business, was kind of the mentality. But I think now a lot of boutiques in particular recognize that the Big Four, Accenture, those type of firms have withheld promotions over the last few years. There are some really, really good consultants on the cusp of that promotion. Maybe they've been waiting for 12, 18 months. And they know that if they can offer them that promotion, they're more likely to land them.
It's a slight tangent from the report, but there won't be a better time to ask about it. And it's just that point, because it's a really interesting challenge. To what you said, that adage of don't promote up, many people have seen why. I have had experience of exactly that, because marketing, I know that one of your sister businesses is marketing. Like, marketing is no different to consulting in that respect. And for anyone listening, almost, if they're presented with that candidate, they've been a manager at Accenture for 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, how do you spot the winner versus the also-ran?
So the way that we would look at that as an agency and try to spot that as an agency is we go into quite a lot of depth in what someone's experience is, what projects they've worked on, what was their role on that project, what were their responsibilities, challenges did they face, how did they overcome those challenges. If someone's at that manager, senior manager type levels, we would look at what budgets were they responsible for, what team sizes were they managing, which client seniority were they interfacing with. We have built up a pretty good base knowledge now of where that might pitch someone in a different business. It's a good example to use, somewhere like a Baringa, where you used to work. A manager at Baringa, the expectations of a manager at Baringa are probably slightly higher than they are of a manager in most of the Big Four. There's slightly more of an expectation around client development. There's a little bit more work on sales, a little bit more of starting to own a proposition that you would generally get close to senior manager in a lot of other businesses. But if I'm speaking to someone who is a manager at an Accenture and they are talking about they own part of the network proposition within the TMT practice, then I'm starting to think, okay, cool, you're probably a senior manager in most other businesses. So I can definitely put you forward at senior manager levels there, regardless of whether salary and the rest of it stacks up.
No, I think that's I think it's a great example for our listeners as well. Actually, what are those benchmarks? There's the obvious to learn more, speak to you, and as I say, I really liked when you showed me that graphic, the explanations, because we all have this in our businesses. One title to one firm means something completely different to another, and even the skill sets, can be really different. So
to just on that matrix, so what we've created there is effectively, if someone joined any of these businesses at graduate level, what would the standard promotion timelines look like for them to get promoted from graduate to consultant, senior consultant, manager, senior manager, director, partner in each of these different consultancies? And we've done that across probably 15 of the top UK consultancies. So we've done all the big four, Accenture, Baringa, Capgemini, PA, North Highland, Morehouse, all of those firms. It is obviously not a perfect tool. Not everybody joins at graduate level and gets promoted every 2 years in the way that you might do at Deloitte or whatever else it might be. But it's a useful barometer on how titles compare across different businesses.
Do you wish that there was a podcast just like this for your consultancy's marketing team? Well, if that is what you want, then you are in luck, because our Brand and Deliver podcast is exactly what you need. In Brand and Deliver, we dive in to marketing for professional services, learning from the experts at the head of some of the best marketing functions in our industry. You will hear directly from firms who have built and scaled incredible marketing to learn exactly how they do it. If you want to listen or you want to share it with one of your colleagues, search on your podcast app for Brand and Deliver, or go to the Create Engage website, hit podcasts, and you'll find it right there. And just because if this is not a short answer, stop me, but because a lot of other things you mentioned have changed over COVID, what is the rule of thumb now? I remember when I was in consulting, and I'm simplifying, but it's kind of every 2 years, it's the old make partner in 10 or whatever it was. Is that still the case? You mentioned now people are withholding promotions, like actually is 2-3, is 3-4. What are you saying?
Varies by business, obviously. Yes, it has extended, not so much necessarily analyst consultant, senior consultant, to use like the Deloitte parlance. But if I was looking at someone like an Accenture, someone getting promoted from consultant to manager because they don't have a senior consultant bracket, historically, some people were doing that in 2.5 years. I would say the average is probably near 3.5 now, maybe even higher. And then the promotion from manager to senior manager there, again, probably looking at 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months longer, as an average at least. So yeah, a lot of this is getting pushed back. You talked about the concept of partner in 10 years. Really, really rare to see that now. I think the average graduate to partner in a big four is something in the region of 16 years now, 15, 16.
Wow. Or is my 10 just really out of date? You can say yes, by the way.
It is, but I think it is also still kind of it's a bit of a common misconception now. A lot of people expect to be able to get promoted quickly, but it's not happening in the way that it used to. And particularly for that final promotion up to partnership, that's a really difficult step to take at the moment, with the current market conditions at least.
I guess back to what we were talking about earlier, it's you really have to be sure of the business case to do it. And if the money isn't there to fund that growth, that becomes very hard. I want to then, just because I know I took us on a slight detour, but I'm really glad, because that was exactly what I was hoping to get. Back to then we've actually now covered salary, career development. The other side of this was that better or positive working culture. And I'd love to know, and I don't know if this is the survey or the feedback you get from candidates day to day, like, what is it that, what is classed as, what is it pushing people away? What's bad, and what is classed as good? So almost people listening can be like, I can take some of that and I can drop some of that.
So I think one of the nice ways or easy ways to summarize this is, from a working culture standpoint, is, do your staff feel incentivized, rewarded fairly? Do they feel listened to? Do they feel like they've been treated well as a consultant? And do they feel like they're doing interesting work? I think if you can tick those boxes, someone will say, yeah, we've got a really good working culture here, where I'm energized and enthused to do work, so I enjoy the work that I'm doing. I feel fairly rewarded for it, and I'm incentivized to progress. And there is or are development opportunities for me to keep moving my career forward here. I think if you can't offer those, people are likely, there's going to be a little bit of frustration probably. And people might say, no, the environment's not right for me. There are obviously a whole host of other elements that factor into a working culture. Like, the leadership team is a huge one. Do the leadership team invest in their junior staff? Are the junior staff can they see themselves in the leadership team? Do they want to be part of that leadership team? Like, there are a lot of other elements that will define a working culture. But I do think if you can incentivize and reward your staff well, often career progression opportunities and often the work that they are interested in, you're going a long way to getting it right.
And there's probably two bits that you didn't mention, and so I'm going to ask about them just because I'm interested of, they are things I probably would have put on the list if you'd asked me. One would be, and this might be reward, but that kind of social come, I don't know, like celebratory element. So going out for dinners, drinks, etc. And the other one, travel, because I know now we're back from COVID, that is coming back. Just because you didn't mention those, are those ever, how prominent are those factors? Or actually, if you get the rest right, people don't care if they're traveling or not?
So the travel and the working from kind of office working versus home working was one of the questions we asked in the survey. The majority of businesses are doing 1 to 2 days a week in an office, whether that's client side or consulting offices. But there is more of a trend towards 3 to 4 days back in the office, going back to almost how it was pre-COVID. There is much more of an acceptance of the concept of home working, though, I think. So if you have a doctor's appointment, if you have something you need to be home for, it's not seen as a big issue in the way that some businesses definitely would have looked at it as an issue pre-COVID. But there is, I think, more of a client appetite to have their consultants back on site a bit, so they can actually see them and get to know them and build the relationships with them. Like, the clients don't necessarily just want a nice PowerPoint deck at the end of it or a new IT system implemented or whatever else. They want to know who they're working with. They want to feel like they are getting a team out of it. So there is definitely an element of more time in the office and more face time. The social side of it and everything that goes around it is really interesting, because a lot of this is anecdotal rather than kind of data points out of the survey. A lot of the more junior consultants that we speak to, they're not necessarily fussed about the working environment in terms of going out for drinks after work or any of those type of bits. They might have a bit of a core group of people that they get on really well in the office, but they're not necessarily focusing on kind of the internal networking opportunities that might come from going for a drink after work with a load of people. They don't necessarily feel like they need that for it to feel like a positive working environment for them. They look at it slightly more coldly, almost, in terms of, am I doing work that I enjoy? Can I get myself promoted? Can I progress? Do I get paid well? Like, if I'm doing that, then yeah, I feel like I'm working in a good place. If they're working with people they get on with, yeah, that's great. But I don't think there has been a little bit of a move away from the real team spirit kind of nature that at least a lot of consultancies would have talked about, from you need to go for beers every Thursday and Friday and whatever else. Like, consulting has moved away from that a fair bit. But I know as consulting founders, and it's true for us here as well, you want to make sure that you are offering it. Because if you're not offering it, even if it's just 1 or 2 people that it's who feel like it is missing, then you really are missing a trick in that instance. So you always want to offer these things, but I would say to founders, maybe temper your expectations about how many of the more junior end of the team would necessarily come to it or feel like they need that type of thing for a good working environment.
That's fascinating. It wasn't what I expected. And actually, Rich, it takes us to almost more advice I know you'll be able to give those founders and consulting leaders of actually that, how they differentiate, from a branding perspective. And almost you're at the front line of this, because there's what we do as marketing, there's the outward brand, and I'll let you tell me if that's important or not, but you're also pitching these brands to these consultants. And almost, how can firms, if in a world where, like you say, if actually then the more junior end of the industry now isn't fussed about the drinks, the dinners, how do consultancies stand out to talent? How can they be positioning themselves as that boutique everyone wants to join?
One of the important things to take into consideration here, particularly if you're looking at bringing across junior consultants from the likes of the Big Four or an Accenture or a larger consultancy, is how much of a bubble those people will likely be in their existing firm. They will not know, for the most part, about the majority of the boutiques in the market. And even if they start looking for a new role, tons of the conversations that we have, we're saying, have you heard about X? Do you know anything about Y business? No. If you're in a Deloitte and you've been at Deloitte since graduation, the likelihood is you might know a couple of the boutiques you maybe come up against or you've worked alongside on engagement or whatever else. You won't know most of the boutiques in the market. So that does present a real opportunity for a lot of the boutiques for when they are trying to go out and recruit. They need to have their EVP super prominent. They need to have a really strong message on this is why someone should come and join us. Focusing, I would say, on progression opportunities, focusing on the interesting work that they're doing, maybe the clients that they're operating with. And then there are some really good examples where businesses have said, look, this is culturally, from an ethos standpoint or from whatever, we are different to the others, and this is how we are different. I know you and I have talked about Elixir before, and the concept of Elixir being the challenger consultancy is amazing from a candidate attraction standpoint. Someone who maybe is in a who's in a Deloitte, or who's in an Accenture, or who's in maybe in someone like an OC&C or any of these these other consultancies, if they're getting fed up at how things are operating in their business, and Elixir is there saying we're the challenger consultancy and we do things differently, awesome. Some people will go look at that and explore them as a business. Not everyone is going to be the challenger consultancy. And it's not dissimilar to what we were talking about earlier in terms of how different boutique consultancies can differentiate themselves in a crowded market to clients. It's a very similar concept here. But there is, with the rise of boutiques and boutiques being more and more successful, there are, I think, a lot of opportunities for boutiques to say, this is the type of work you'll be doing here. This is how we are different from wherever else. So that then when one of these consultants hears about them and goes on their website and clicks on the careers page, or sees them on LinkedIn, or sees one of the partners posting on LinkedIn, then they can start to get interested.
And I mean, Elixir's a great example, and we've talked about them a lot. A lot of people in the industry do, of they have really well positioned themselves, provocative, forward-thinking, challenger. That's the whole ethos. And I guess for anyone listening, particularly if someone is wanting to work with someone like yourself, because almost every one of your clients will be aware you are working with multiple clients, and it's no secret, and I'm sure you talk to clients about this, like candidates might be speaking through you to multiple firms, and that's exactly what you should be doing and what they expect. Almost for anyone listening, what are the things, if you were like, here is your shopping list, what are the things they should be doing from that EVP, that employer brand perspective, and in what order? I guess almost to help you, because I love what you were saying there around, if I've been in Deloitte, I probably am going to you, or someone like yourself, and I've never heard of Boutique X. What are those, like, I've got finite time, money, budget, etc. What's the thing I should be focusing on? What are the top 3 things I should be doing to enhance that EVP, put me front of the queue?
What is most likely to attract those candidates? I think the knowledge that they're going to be surrounded by top tier people, it definitely has to be up there. If someone is coming out of a big 4 firm where you are surrounded by super intelligent other grad, particularly if you join at grad level, you are surrounded by very, very intelligent people, partnerships, super intelligent, driven. You don't want that person to feel like they're taking a step back in caliber to come and join a boutique. And 90% of the time, they're not taking a step back. If anything, they're possibly taking a step up. But you need to have that at the forefront. So you can talk about other members of staff from Deloitte, from McKinsey, whatever, to show that you have the right caliber of staff, people like that. Talk about the progression opportunities there. There are some boutiques at the moment who offer a quarterly promotion opportunity. So you're not going to get promoted necessarily twice in a year, but there are 4 chances every year to get promoted. If you come from a business where there's only 1 opportunity a year, great, that's enticing. And I think if you can clearly articulate the type of work you're doing and the type of clients you're doing that work with in a way that someone like me or one of my team or another agency can very clearly articulate, they do strategic transformation work within wealth and asset management. If I'm speaking to the right candidate about that, great, that's enough for them to get their ears poked up to actually listen to the rest. No,
I think some great points. I love that. Like, talk about the other talent they're going to be working with, because I think so often we jump to what we do, like show them the dinners, show them the drinks, and actually it's fascinating to hear from you, having been on the front lines of this and spoken to these candidates, actually showing, well, we are just great. We have these great people, we have this strength. You are going to get these promotions, or get these opportunities. Don't get me wrong, like the X or Y business has grown 30% year on year since they were founded 6 years ago. And like that is a growth story. Yeah, that will go down really well. Or, they take everyone plus one's kids away for a weekend every year. Great. Like that will appeal to some people. They booked out 10 Eurostars and like branded it and all that type of stuff. That will go down really nicely for some people as well. Did someone actually do that? Yeah. Or is that... Yeah. They booked out half of Disneyland Paris and took 6 Eurostars over with branding on, and it's awesome. It's great if businesses are doing that. And some people will look at that and go, yeah, cool. They invest in their staff and I like that. Some will look at that and go, what's that got to do with my day-to-day life though? Like that has nothing to do with the clients I'm going to be working with and the people I'm going to be working with on it. Are there any other, just because I love that one, and I know our listeners love kind of those practical thought starters and just those triggers, is there anything else you've heard other firms do, if they're public, you can attribute them, if not, anonymized, but like, that really wows your candidates when you're speaking to them? What are the examples that you drop from that, like that Eurostar one that just always candidates are like, wow? One of the things that I think does go down really, really well is if you're doing an away weekend or something like that, plus ones, families, kids, that type of thing, get them involved as well. For people with kids or people like partners, whatever else,
that shows that the business is invested in more than just you as a member of staff. It's like they actually want to get to know you as a person. It's an adult to adult relationship rather than employer-employee. That always goes down quite well. It doesn't have to be taking them to Disneyland Paris. It doesn't have to be like that. Another firm I know going to Ibiza next year, and like they've got one of the most luxury hotels in Ibiza they've effectively booked out. It's like, awesome for you. Great. Last year, I think they did the Isle of Wight because it hadn't been such a successful year the year before. Like,
it's quite a symbolism of, how did we do?
But if you're doing that and you're taking their husbands, wives, kids away, that type of thing, people feel bought into the business in a way that I think, as opposed to just doing staff taking them away. So that always goes down very, very well. The quarterly promotion thing actually is one of the ones that I think we most frequently, candidates will say, actually, that's awesome. Like the chance to get promoted 4 times a year. So if you miss it once, you don't have to wait 12 months to get promoted. That's one of the key differentiators. Logistically, it's a nightmare for the consultancies, and most larger consultancies won't be able to start embracing that. But maybe for a smaller firm, having flexibility about time in year when someone does get promoted, maybe not anchoring it around mid-year or end of year. Like, are there thresholds or targets or responsibilities or demonstrations that someone needs to have hit to be able to get promoted? Great, in which case you can do it at a random point. That would go down really well as well.
I think some great points, Richard. And this has been a fantastic discussion. And I'm very conscious of your time, our time, and plans after this that mean we're drawing ourselves to a close. And so I'm going to move to my final questions that I ask every guest. And I know you've listened to a few of these episodes, so you'll be expecting them. And given what you do, I think you'll have some great answers. So the first one is advice. And it is, you have 3 people in front of you. These might be candidates that you're trying to help get that next move. You've got one just entering the industry like you when you went to CAP. You've got one approaching, I call it manager level, that kind of mid-level pre-partner. And you've got one who's approaching partner. And the question is, what one piece of advice would you give to each of them?
Right. So the analyst, if we start with there, I think the key thing that I would stress to any analyst is the importance of networking internally. But I think I mentioned I got promoted early off the graduate scheme at CAP. I don't think I was the best consultant at CAP, but I think I networked really well. So senior leadership knew me. I'd worked with them on bid responses or pieces of internal marketing and the recruitment side of things for the graduate program as well. So I got my name in front of a lot of senior people, which meant when I was putting my promotion case forward, I think I was known. I definitely wasn't the best consultant of the intake. But that networking upwards, networking internally is what's going to get you resourced on the right projects, is what's going to get you recognized and put forward for promotions and for opportunities that some people might not otherwise get. So you have to network internally, I think. For the manager, I think for a lot of people, manager is probably where you start to specialize, whether that's sector, whether that's skill. It is also where a lot of people will ask you to start selling. We hear a lot of people say that they don't want to sell, which is why at manager grade, a lot of people leave consulting. There are alternatives where you don't have to sell. There are consultancies who will take you at manager grade where sales is not a part of your role and you can just focus on delivery. So if you are in that position, you don't have to just move to industry, which is what a lot of people look to do. But if you are looking to stay in consulting and you are looking to grow and sell, get yourself out there. Again, it's a networking concept. It's which clients are you working with? How can you network within those clients? A lot of the relationships that you might build at this point in 5 years' time might be decision makers. People who at that stage, they'll be looking to use you if you've maintained a good relationship with them. And in 5 years' time, that's probably part of your director partner case as well. So start focusing on those relationships. And for someone who is pre-partner, for me, this is really interesting kind of career juncture, because if you're committing to that partner path in your existing business, you're probably committing a 3-year journey maybe to try and push for partner. I would encourage everyone at that stage to also think, do I only want to be looking at that here, or is this the right time for me to start considering other options and maybe pushing for partnership somewhere else? Because I'm committing on a 3-year journey here. Is that 3-year journey best spent in this one place, or could I be looking at actually investing my time elsewhere? Like, all of those are kind of career juncture points. I think it's quite interesting when someone not only thinks, what are the opportunities for me internally, but could this be a time to look externally?
I think some great advice, Richard. And yeah, that really, especially that manager point, if we had more time, really interesting piece to talk about. And then the very last one is books. I'm an avid reader. I always love getting book recommendations. What is the book that either has had the biggest impact on you or you found yourself giving to others most, and why was that?
So from a business standpoint, there are a lot of elements of, Legacy, I think it's Jason Kerr, it's a book about the All Blacks. It's one of those books that I've read it a few times, and there's always these little nuggets you look at and go, actually, no, I really like that, as a way of not necessarily, I mean, it sounds very holier than thou to say as a way of living my life, but definitely in terms of kind of the type of culture that I want to try and create within Tarka, and as a way of working with other people, and kind of, legacies and reputations take ages to build. And I think there's an element of that I've taken from that, and I've recommended it to a lot of other people.
I love that. This might put you on the spot, so stop me if it does. But you mentioned from a business perspective. Did you have one on a personal perspective?
There's a book that I've just got back from holiday a couple of weeks ago, and a book that I read there, I think I've recommended to 30, 40 people.
Wow.
And it is written by the wife of a friend of mine, so I'll give them a shout out, because why not? So there's a book called The Portrait Artist, written by Danny Hayward Lonsdale. So Ollie, her husband, and I started at Capgemini at the same time. And this is her first book, published by Bloomsbury, and it is fantastic. So yeah, I've recommended it to anyone and everyone.
I love that. Well, thank you for the recommendation. And we are heading off on holiday probably in a month's time, so I will pick up a copy. Well, Richard, this has been brilliant. Really enjoyed catching up. Obviously, we've talked about some of these bits before, but there's some really fascinating things in there off the survey that I didn't know, and it really struck me with what you were saying around the consulting world maybe we grew up in isn't the same anymore, which probably, for a lot of our listeners is fascinating to hear and really helpful. For anyone who wants to find out more about yourselves, they want to download the benchmark, the survey report, they want to download the salary, the matrix we talked about, or they're looking to hire or they're looking for a new role, where would you point them to? Where can they get in touch?
So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am at 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, so I need people to follow rather than connect, because I frequently go through and say, actually, there's probably a load of people here that I shouldn't be connected to. So I do clean it every now and again, but I am at the limit of what LinkedIn will let me have.
Congratulations. Do you get a prize when that happens?
I don't think so. I have seen some people put it on their LinkedIn headers, and I think that's a little too self-glorifying. So I'll just say it on a podcast instead. So no, people can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn, or my email is richard@tarkatalent.co.uk if people want to reach out to me there. The salary report, the matrix, is all on our website as well. So yeah, easily accessible there.
Amazing, Richard. Well, thank you. If anyone is listening, they will come and follow. And as I say, this has been brilliant. So thank you for this, and all the best for the rest of your week.
And thank you very much.
Cheers, Richard. Today's episode is brought to you by Create Engage, the specialist digital marketing agency for the disruptive management consultancy. Now, for long-time listeners, you will probably already know who we are. You may have even heard one of our ads on a previous episode of this podcast. But for those of you who don't, here is a short introduction. At Create Engage, we help you create an effective marketing strategy for your consultancy, a strategy that will resonate with your target clients. And then we support you by delivering the campaigns you need to turn that strategy into a reality, helping you to build your brand, raise your profile with your prospective clients, and ultimately generate return on investment from your marketing activity. Now, I could tell you about many of the great clients that we work with and the results we've delivered for them. But instead, I'm going to do something much more powerful, and something that I would recommend you do for your own marketing. I'm going to let our clients do the talking for us. If you are currently thinking about marketing for your consultancy, you're going to want to listen to this.
Create Engage started the process for us. They managed it end to end. They came up with some really creative ideas, and we were really happy with the work that they did, which meant that we could just focus on running the business. Not only did we start conversations with clients that we hadn't spoken to before, but also there was tangible return on investment by some work that we were given.
They've helped right from the initial shaping of the idea through to helping us work out what our end goal was. They've supported us with the visual identity and our positioning of the brand.
We've had an immediate expansion of our network and have initiated a raft of new conversations with owners, CEOs in target client organisations, and has led to us winning new projects already.
One of the greatest compliments, I guess, is that one of our competitors even said that they really like what we're doing with marketing. They wish they could be doing something as good.
So from our perspective, we couldn't recommend Create Engage any more than this.
I would certainly recommend Create Engage if you're a consulting firm. They really understand consultancies and the sort of challenges we face. And, I don't think you're going to get much better marketing anywhere else.
So I wouldn't hesitate to recommend Create Engage. They did a really good job for us.
So if you're looking for an agency that can help you achieve the results that our clients just described, then head to our website, createengage.co.uk, where you can find out more about how we support consulting firms like you, You can download our latest ebook and you can get in touch to talk about how we can help you take your consultancy to the next level through digital marketing. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Climbing Consulting. If you have any guest recommendations, comments, ideas, thoughts on how I can make this show better for you, just drop me an email. It's nick@createengage.co.uk, and I really look forward to hearing from you.